Well, welcome to The Perspective. I'm Lorie and really glad that you're here today. You're going to be deeply inspired because I know that God sends people to our show that have a powerful story to share. And today you're going to meet Michelle Rogers. She's a woman whose story is nothing short of miraculous. Through 5 weddings, 4 husbands, 3 children, and countless painful moments, Michelle found herself at a crossroads with only 2 choices, as she would say, and was saved by one Savior. After years of cycling through dysfunctional relationships, Michelle encountered the relentless love of God and began a journey of healing and restoration. And she's now the founder, president, and director of the Hope Centre. You got to love that, right? A Christian coffee shop, bookstore, and community hub that brings the light of Christ to her city. Her life is a testimony that no one is ever too far from gone for God's hope and redemption. Welcome to The Perspective, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
So glad that you're here. When I first read your story, I was so deeply moved.
Sure.
And I was moved because you've already chatted with me. It really is God's story.
100%. Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
And so thank you, though, for being raw and real with us. It is a story that's incredibly redemptive, but difficult. Can you take us back to some of the early lies you believed about yourself? Maybe as a young person, how that shaped your identity, your view of yourself as you were growing up?
Yeah, for sure. So I think when I look back at things, so I did 2 years of therapy, and in that's where I discovered where the seeds really got planted that guided my painful path.
Yeah.
And so one of them was, it wasn't a huge tragic scenario. It was simply that I used to hear the story when I was quite young that I wasn't planned, which is a common thing to have a pregnancy that's not planned.
Right.
By a happily married couple, but I just wasn't in the plan right at that time. And so the funny story would be that I wasn't planned, and then when I arrived, I was colicky, and they thought I was going to be a boy, but I was a girl, and they would just recollect this fun story. But as a young little girl, the enemy, I believe, saw the opportunity to plant seeds that you're not what anyone wants, you are not wanted, and that is where, for me, it really began. I have this other time period where this other scenario, not a scenario, but situation that happened when I was around 8 years old. A family member and I, little kids, went out on my grandpa's tinny boat and out in the Georgian Bay and drove to an island. We're like 8, at which we shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
I was being saved, but you in a boat at 8 years old on Georgian Bay. Yeah. So we got onto this little island, and then my family member, it was my cousin, hopped back in the boat and pulled away from the shore and said, if you want to go home, you've got to swim to the boat. And I was too afraid. And so they left me there. And so here I am, 8 years old, left on this island. I don't know for how long. I blocked it all until I was in my 30s. And my parents didn't know that this had happened to me because I was being babysat. And so what that said to me was that you don't matter. No one's even going to miss you when you're gone. My parents never talked about it. I was traumatized and I blocked it. And so it was these somewhat simple scenarios that planted a seed that you're not what anyone wants. And so as I went into my teenage years, it was low self-esteem, was the animal, was my pain and my suffering, was the low self-esteem. So I went into, as a teenager, thinking that I had no worth, thinking that I wasn't what anyone wanted.
Yeah.
So when attention, when I would be given attention by a man, I did not have what it took to turn that away.
Right.
Because my self-worth was so low that if someone paid attention to me, I couldn't refuse it somewhat.
Yeah.
I was attracted to men that would do things I would never do. And subconsciously, I learned later that if I was with someone that did things that I would never do, then I got to feel like I was better, I was worth something. if I could rescue them, then I was the hero. People would say to me, "What are you doing with that person? You deserve better." And so it was all this unhealthy mindset that kept driving this cycle over and over again. And it took, well, when I was 32 years old, and by that time had already had one failed marriage, a second failed marriage, 2 children from the 2 failed marriages, plus then a relationship that had failed and now pregnant, and on my own, a single mom with 3 children, bringing my newborn baby home, feeling like the biggest failure in the world. That I finally realized that the common denominator was me. And that's when I went to a 12-step Christ Center program called Conquering Codependency.
Right.
And I began to understand the cycle. And I began to understand the lies.
Yeah.
And understanding the lies, I then had logic. This is why I made those bad choices. And then I could begin to change them.
Thanks for sharing that. It's interesting how lies, and we know this way the enemy works, very subtly, and often with children, a seemingly kind of innocent, maybe statements from your parents, or honestly, a traumatic situation being left on that island, no doubt. But it's the lies that step in.
Yeah.
And if we have a low view of ourselves, then it often is like you say, the beast, the animal that can just take you down that broken path of, well, if I'm no good, then I don't expect anybody else to treat me as if I'm worth anything, right?
Well, and I can remember my mom, my family saying, "What are you doing with someone like that? What are you doing, Shelley?" And that didn't help.
Right.
I already knew that I was in the wrong.
So was shame a big struggle in your life? Like, couldn't break out of those
It was like shadow of it. Being raised by, I often joke around, by Warren June Cleaver. Like, there was my sister and I, my mom, I never saw my parents fight. We were raised in the Jesus Revolution. It was potlucks, fellowship.
Lots of church background.
Lots of church background, but I believed the lies the enemy told me.
Yeah.
And when I would hear scriptures that God loved me, the enemy bombarded me so strongly that that's what I believed for a very long time.
And someone's listening to this story and they've been in those dysfunctional relationships.
Yeah.
You pick the wrong men.
Over and over.
Over and over again. I mean, you say 5 weddings, 4 husbands, like the cycle of dysfunction that went on, because a lot of it underneath was your own shame.
And no self-worth.
And no self-worth. So you came to the end of yourself. You've got, 3 kids, been through a few marriages, and you end up in this recovery program.
Yeah.
Tell us what really brought you into, well, first of all, back to Jesus. Like, you loved Jesus as a little girl.
Always. I was on worship teams. I was in Bible studies. God always had my heart. He didn't have my will. And I say that I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 5. I gave my will to the Lord when I was 45.
Wow.
And
it was a powerful statement.
It was a tough journey.
Yeah.
Because there's this battle. Because I had such a heart for the Lord, I kept making these wrong choices and I didn't understand why. And the 12-step program gave me the logic I needed, because up until then, I couldn't forgive myself. This didn't make sense to me. I had excellent parents as examples of God-loving, God-fearing people to raise me. And I couldn't understand why I kept making the same choice over and over again with abusive, alcoholic, drug addict. Like, why am I doing this over and over again? When I understood that it's my self-worth that is driving me there, then I was sad for her. I understood it. I had compassion for that person and I loved her. I wanted to protect her and I forgave her.
Yeah.
And then I could change the cycle because I understood it.
Wow. I have so many good things to say about the 12-step program, and it works its way out in various groups and formats, but it is about coming to the end of yourself and recognizing you need the power of God outside of yourself to change this. And he changed you from the inside out. We're going to come right back.
Yeah.
This is an incredible story. Don't go away. We're going to be right back with more of Michelle's story. Well, welcome back. Michelle, your story is incredible. I'm sure there's someone watching going, I believed lies about myself that kept me in dysfunctional cycles, in shame, in just hurtful cycle in my life. What do you say to them? Like, what was the truth that, at least one of the truths that set you free and broke you out of this cycle?
So when I was 32 years old and I'd had my third child, that was when I got started the 12-step program, because I could see I was a common denominator of choosing the bad relationships. And so that began a journey. But I would say, because I continued, so that was when I had my third child, that was just boyfriend number 3. I then eventually married him, and then he relapsed to his horrific addiction and died. And then I remarried my second husband because I was within the year that my third husband had passed away, because I was desperate. I was really hurting and I was desperate. And so, I mean, the cycle still continued, making bad choices. What was the game changer for me was twice in my life I've heard very distinct statements from God. And the first one was, I was sitting in my living room window, looking out into our front yard, sipping on a cup of tea, and completely out of the blue, God said to me, it's time to give up the right to be right. And at that time, I didn't quite know what that meant. But now, in hindsight, looking back at the changes, it was time for me to give up my strong will of having to constantly prove that I had a right to be right. Because my low self-esteem and low self-worth was a constant battle for me to make good choices for myself. So when I was right, I was right.
You felt better about yourself.
I felt better about myself, and I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. So one of the areas where, as reflecting back, a time that was really evident was I was in a drive-through getting a coffee, and I used all my manners. Please, thank you, cheery voice, as we should. And the person that gave me the coffee didn't have any eye contact, didn't engage me in any way. And by rights, they should, because I was polite.
Yeah.
They should be polite, right? And so I politely said to the person in the drive-through window, have I offended you? They, scrambled no, and carried on my way. And I felt empowered. I called them on their ignorance, and I wasn't rude by no means. I just wondered why that they were not being polite. And when I think back, when God started to show me that, what would Jesus have done in that simple scenario of being in a drive-through? Would he have looked at that person, called them on their lack of manners, perhaps embarrassed them in front of their colleagues, got them in trouble in front of their boss? He probably would have looked at her with eyes of love, known her heart. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she just found out her mother had cancer. Who knows? But self-righteous me, I've got a collar on it and center shot her. And when God started to show me all the areas in my life that I was taking that stance over and over again, and being right and demanding that I be treated right, because for so long I had been treated so wrongly.
Right.
And that's when my heart began to change. And I could see that even though I'm in the right, even though it's not wrong of me to ask to be treated politely,
Yeah.
that what God wanted me to do was to do what he would do.
Yeah.
And he got a hold of my will, and he got a hold of my heart. And that's when my life changed. I started to look at people through the eyes of Jesus instead of through the eyes of Michelle, who needed everybody's approval and acceptance. And when he got my heart, my life changed in such an incredible way. And before, looking back at the 5 weddings, the 4 husbands, 3 children, there was so much embarrassment and shame. I consider myself to be a relatively intelligent woman, but the product did not look that way. And when he told me to give up the right to be right, he basically was assuring me, you don't need to defend yourself anymore.
Right.
I just need your heart.
Yeah.
And you need to trust me.
Yeah.
And that's when my life began to change, when I gave up my will.
Well, you know what I see in your story. Thank you for sharing that. Your view of people certainly has changed, because you now have a ministry that you are opening the door of this coffee shop to minister to people, no matter where they are in their life.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we go through tough things, it gives us a capacity, when we have the humility to love and view others more loving. How did this coffee shop begin?
So
Ministry.
That is such a awesome God story.
I understand, just in summary, just because of time, that there was a witch in town.
Yeah.
She asked you to do a website for her, and you refused, and that kind of blew up and went viral, right?
It did. It went horribly viral, and witches from across the land were messaging me horrific things about God, and the blasphemy was horrible. And drawing that line in the sand and saying no, I said it caringly, respectfully.
But didn't feel that was the right thing for you to do.
Right.
It's your business. Yeah.
And drawing that line in the sand empowered me in a way that I had never experienced before. And when I researched, when I saw the post that she had posted, upset that I had turned down this job opportunity, I researched her business, and I learned that her shop sold witchcraft paraphernalia, which is why I declined the opportunity. I didn't want to use the gifts God gave me to promote witchcraft.
Right.
So you can go to this cute little shop downtown and buy potions to cast evil spells on people, but there was nowhere to buy a Bible. And as a Christian, that reality made me angry that the enemy had that kind of a foothold.
Right.
And that during this viral explosion, the community that supported the person wanting to sell potions to cast evil spells, and the support from that, and yet the person the offer of hope and of love.
Right. And to be able to buy a Bible, to go and get, resources that will bring you closer to God. So you started this coffee shop, and this ministry continues, and it's flourishing, and you've got all kinds of people involved.
Yeah, it is just incredible. And so when, so it was a year I mulled it over.
Yeah.
And as I'm mulling it over, thinking, God, this cannot, you cannot want me. This cannot be real, because I can't drink coffee. I have such bad ADHD that to sit and read quietly,
A book reader, coffee drinker type.
No, and I don't like to bake. So God asked me to open up a Christian bookstore, coffee shop. But what I learned was it wasn't what I could do. It was who I was. And who I was formed from those years of bad choices, gave me a heart that perhaps I wouldn't have. So he can figure out the books and the baking. He needed my heart and what he has done in my life to be part of the story to share.
What a story of redemption, Michelle.
Oh,
thank you for sharing it with us. How do people find this bookstore quickly?
So hopecenter.co.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's an inspiring story. Your story is inspiring. What a reminder, when God gets our heart, he can take care of the books and the baking.
Yeah.
He wants to change people's lives, and he's changed your life.
Yes, he certainly has.
Thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you for the opportunity.